Welcome to today's deep dive. And if you are listening to this right now, I want you to know exactly what this is and probably more importantly, what this isn't.
Yeah, we are definitely not doing any warm, fuzzy HR fluff today.
No, absolutely not. We're not going to tell you to lean in or find your balance or, I don't know, synergize your domestic ecosystem.
Please, no synergizing.
Right. Today, we have this massive stack of sources. We've got economic research papers, fMRI brain scans, and just hundreds of pages of field notes on corporate sociology. And our mission is a brutally honest analytical breakdown of something called the ambition handbrake.
Which is such a great term because it perfectly describes this systemic, almost mathematical career deceleration that hits high-performing parents.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because whether you are currently hiding in a soundproof phone booth at a co-working space, desperately ordering bulk diapers on Amazon Prime while pretending to be on an urgent client escalation call.
Which, let's be real, so many people are doing.
Oh, constantly. Or, maybe you manage someone who is doing exactly that. Either way, this deep dive is going to validate your exhaustion with cold, hard data.
And the core thesis across all these sources is pretty stark. The decision to step back from the corporate fast track, to hit that ambition handbrake, it is not a lack of drive.
Right.
It's a highly calculated mathematical survival mechanism. I mean, we're looking at the exact intersection where outdated corporate infrastructure just violently collides with modern biological and economic reality.
It really boils down to risk mitigation, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Before we even touch on the daily chaos of raising a child, we have to look at the macroeconomics.
Because the spreadsheet demands it.
Exactly. The financial spreadsheet is just bleak. When you analyze the raw numbers in these economic papers, decelerating isn't a lifestyle choice.
Sure.
It's really the only logical response to a labor market that is structurally hostile to caregiving. But let me just play devil's advocate for a second here. Because corporate leadership is always wondering aloud about this ambition gap, right? They ask why certain demographics seem to just lose their drive. Are the numbers really that bleak? Or is it just, a natural shift in priorities?
Oh, the numbers are staggering. They completely debunk that whole loss of ambition theory. The sources outline this massive divergence in career trajectories that triggers the literal moment a child is born. Economists call it the motherhood penalty versus the fatherhood premium.
Okay, fatherhood premium. Let's look at the data for men first.
Yeah, so the research shows that men actually receive, on average, a 6% salary bump per child. And that compounds.
Wait, a 6% bump just for having a kid?
Yep. By the time they hit age 2, fathers enjoy a 21% salary advantage over men without children.
Hang on, let me stop you there. Is it possible fathers get a 6% bump because they suddenly panic about a new mortgage, they feel this intense pressure to provide, and they just start working 80-hour weeks?
Yeah.
Objectively putting in more billable hours?
I mean, that is the common assumption, right? But the data actually controls for hours worked.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the premium exists even when the output is identical. Historically, corporate bias interprets a father as someone who is now tethered to financial responsibilities. So they're seen as stable.
Ah, prime for leadership.
Exactly. They get a premium for the exact same biological and life event that heavily penalizes women.
Right, the penalty. So what does that actually look like in the data?
Mothers suffer a 4 to 7% marginal penalty per child.
Yeah.
And this penalty, it initiates at the very beginning of the pipeline, right at the hiring phase.
Yeah, those experimental studies in the source stack were wild to read.
Right. Researchers put identical resumes in front of hiring managers, literally the exact same credentials, education, experience. The only difference is one resume includes a tiny minor signal of motherhood like being an officer in a parent-teacher association, and the other doesn't.
And the results were just
brutal. The non-mothers had an 84% hiring recommendation rate.
And the mothers?
47%.
That is just, wow.
And it gets worse. The hiring managers recommended an $11,000 lower starting salary for the mothers. Again, for identical credentials.
It's basically like walking into a casino, right? We're simply mentioning you gave birth, automatically confiscates 10% of your chips, and docks your confidence rating. But if you're a dad, they hand you a VIP card and a 6% bonus for being stable.
That is the perfect analogy. Sociologists actually call this commitment bias and competence bias. Hiring managers are actively, though usually subconsciously, docking a mother's perceived competence by 10% and her commitment by 15%.
So it's not just an abstract sociological thing. It acts as this structural compounding tax on lifetime wage growth.
Exactly.
And I want to talk about that compounding effect.
Yeah.
Because the dollar amount in the research just completely blew my mind. If you're a 30-year-old making 50 grand a year and you take just a 5-year career break, which, a lot of people do because they literally cannot find childcare, the financial hit isn't just 5 years of a $50K salary.
Not even close. You have to calculate the direct wage loss, the lost wage growth, and the lost compounding retirement assets.
Which brings the cumulative lifetime cost of a 5-year break to, and I really want this number to sink in for you listening, $539,795.
It's staggering.
Over $500,000. Hitting the brakes isn't a lack of ambition. It's an absolute refusal to play a financially rigged game.
And, we have to factor in the catalyst for a lot of those career breaks, which is the childcare crisis. The average national cost of childcare is around $10,500 annually.
Which is already a lot.
But the research notes that in major metropolitan areas, it spikes to $15,000 or even $20,000 a year per child. It's this massive market failure. It drains the U.S. economy of somewhere between $122 billion and $172 billion annually in lost earnings and productivity.
So if the system demands unlimited availability
Mm-hmm.
and heavily penalizes any deviation from that traditional ideal worker model, stepping back is just protecting your baseline survival. But, okay, let's pretend for a second that you decide to power through anyway, right? You're going to outwork the motherhood penalty. You're just going to grind it out. This is where the biological wall hits you.
Oh, yeah. The biology is unforgiving.
Because if the financial penalties aren't enough to force a downshift, the medical data confirms your own body will just enforce a hard limit.
We're talking about the neurobiology of early parenthood now, and this is where the research gets incredibly visceral.
Yeah, we're moving from spreadsheets to brain scans.
Right. We're looking at the severe impact of sleep fragmentation on the prefrontal cortex. That's the region of the brain responsible for executive function, cognitive flexibility, behavioral regulation, complex risk assessment.
Basically everything you need to do a corporate job.
Exactly.
Everything.
So how bad is the impairment? Really? Because, corporate culture kind of glorifies running on empty. Like, I only slept 4 hours last night. I'm crushing it. Well, the medical sources translate this specific type of sleep deficit into a blood alcohol concentration, or BIC equivalent. If you endure 24 hours of total sleep deprivation, your cognitive impairment is equal to a 0.10% BAC.
Wait, 0.10, so you are legally drunk in all 50 states?
Yes, and even just 16 hours of continuous waking, which is a standard day for most people, let alone a parent, up in the middle of the night, puts you at a 0.05 to 0.07% BAC.
See, here's where it gets really interesting to me. If a CEO showed up to a high-stakes merge negotiation, like 3 margaritas deep, slurring their words, unable to track the conversation, they'd be fired immediately.
Immediately.
But a parent doing the exact same complex risk assessment running on 4 months of interrupted sleep is just expected to, optimize cross-functional synergies on a Tuesday morning, like it's completely normal.
And the danger is that parents of infants and toddlers aren't just missing one night of sleep. They are enduring chronic partial sleep restriction over months or even years. And this causes cumulative executive dysfunction. You experience something neurologists call wake state instability.
Wake state instability. What does that actually look like in a corporate setting, like in a cubicle?
It means you're experiencing these unpredictable, brief cognitive lapses, like microsleeps or attention blackouts that intrude into your active wakefulness.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you might be staring at a spreadsheet and for 10 seconds, your brain simply stops processing the numbers. But the most dangerous element of this is subjective adaptation.
Meaning they think they're fine when they aren't.
Exactly. Because you're constantly exhausted, your internal baseline shifts, you actually report feeling alert. You feel capable, while objectively, your cognitive performance is severely degrading.
So what is physically happening inside the brain to cause that disconnect?
The fMRI data is fascinating here. When researchers scan the brains of people in the state of chronic sleep debt, they observe significantly reduced metabolic activity in the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex.
Okay.
And because that area is underpowered, it physically weakens the neural connectivity between the prefrontal cortex, which is the logic center, and the amygdala, which is the emotional processing center.
Wait, so the logic center essentially just loses its grip on the emotion center.
That's the exact mechanism. It leads directly to heightened emotional reactivity, impulsivity, and cognitive rigidity, which is the inability to pivot when new information is presented. They aren't just tired, their actual brain architecture is temporarily compromised.
Okay, so you take a structurally rigged financial system
Yeah.
and you drop a mildly intoxicated, cognitively compromised brain right into it. How does that person actually get through a Tuesday?
With a lot of friction.
Right. The sociological field notes break this daily operational friction down into 5 distinct tension zones. And I kind of love the dark, absurd comedy of how high performers survive this.
Oh, the survival tactics are incredible. The first zone is the ambition handbrake itself in practice, which the research terms the promotion penalty.
Yeah, there is a brilliant scene in the research illustrating this. An associate director gets offered a promotion to director. It comes with a fancy new title of 15% raise, but it requires going back to the downtown office 4 days a week instead of 2. So she sits down, looks at her toddler, who is currently painting the family dog with Greek yogurt,
As toddlers do.
naturally. And she runs the math.
And the math is ruthless.
It really is. The post-tax raise works out to an extra $450 a month. But she calculates the new downtown parking passes, the bridge tolls, the extra dry cleaning, and the extended early drop-off daycare fees required for the commute. And that costs exactly $650 a month.
So the marginal utility of the promotion is literally negative. She would be paying $200 a month for the privilege of working harder and seeing her child less.
Right. So what does she do? She politely declines the promotion. She tells her boss she wants to focus on core efficiencies in her current role, hangs up, and goes to wash yogurt off the dog. It's a mathematically flawless decision, but the company, they just log it in her file as a lack of leadership ambition.
Which naturally transitions us to zone 2. Because once you decline the promotion, you still have to survive the job you currently have. This is what the research calls the quiet quitting paradox. Though I should note, quiet quitting is a terrible misnomer in this context.
Yeah, it's not quitting at all.
No, it's actually a highly tactical reallocation of resources. And the primary tactic is calendar shielding.
Calendar shielding, yes.
Yeah.
The example of the executive writer who books a recurring 2-hour block on her calendar titled Deep Focus, Macro Strategic Alignment. Her colleagues see that block and think, oh, she's in a flow state, drafting intensive white papers.
Right.
But in reality, she's sprinting through her house, sterilizing 6 bottles, pureeing zucchini, and throwing in 3 loads of laundry. Then she pops onto a 3.15 video call looking pristine, drops a few strategic buzzwords, and signs off.
The paradox here is their return on effort matrix. We have to remember, we're talking about historically high-performing individuals here. Because they're so skilled, their absolute baseline compliance, like the bare minimum they can do without getting fired, is entirely equal to the maximum output of an average worker.
That is such a crucial point.
Yeah, they deliberately strip away the performative hustle. The 9 p.m. emails, the volunteering for extra committees, they execute high-efficiency mediocrity specifically to protect their prefrontal cortex from entirely burning out.
But, you can't just hide behind a screen forever. Eventually, corporate culture demands that you interact. Which brings us to Zone 3, networking demise, the strict elimination of out-of-hours politics. The research calls it the Seltzer and lime run.
This zone explores the rapid erosion of social capital. We know that corporate advancement is heavily lubricated by informal networking, right? The 5 p.m. happy hours, impromptu client dinners. But for a parent of a young child, the window between 4:30 and 7:30 p.m. is the most high-stakes, non-negotiable logistical sprint of the day.
Absolutely. The sources highlight this attorney at a mandatory 4.30 firm happy hour.
Yeah.
She goes to the bar, buys a club soda with lime so everyone assumes she's drinking gin and tonic. She knows her daycare closes at 6 p.m. sharp, and they charge a strict $1 per minute late fee. Yeah, so she realizes that if she stays until 6.15 to properly network, she is quite literally paying $15 out of her own pocket to listen to a junior associate talk about his fantasy football draft. So she just sneaks out the side door at 4:40 like a fugitive.
And why does this matter systemically? Because men are statistically far more likely to have partners who are absorbing that strict domestic deadline, allowing them to stay. They drink the real beer, they chat with the senior partners, they secure that fatherhood premium in visibility and relationship building, while the mothers are systematically shut out of the informal information pipelines.
And even when they successfully dodge the happy hour and are sitting at their desks working, they aren't just at work. Zone 4 is cognitive boundary blurring, or running a dual kernel brain. This is probably my favorite concept in the whole stack of research.
Accurate.
Let me ask you and the listener, have you ever treated a bulk order of size 3 diapers on Amazon Prime with the same cutthroat urgency as global corporate procurement? Because that is exactly what is happening in their heads all day long.
The cognitive load of maintaining that boundary is just immense. The sociological research calls this specific phenomenon the allergen audit.
Oh, yes. Picture a principal analyst sitting in a high-stakes boardroom. The CFO is projecting a slide about a $12 million budget shortfall. She's nodding, making intense eye contact, but her background processor is absolutely screaming.
Because of the peanut butter.
Because she can't remember if the nanny gave the baby his peanut butter microdose to prevent allergies. She is mentally running a complex statistical risk assessment on systemic anaphylaxis versus the social costs of pulling out her phone during a budget review, all while secretly checking a 14-month daycare waitlist on a hidden browser tab.
We have to connect this back to the neurobiology we discussed earlier. This multitasking isn't a superpower, and frankly, treating it like one is dangerous. It is a chronic, multi-directional state of emergency. This dual kernel processing obliterates the psychological boundary between work and family. And it triggers massive decision fatigue because it heavily taxes the already sleep-deprived prefrontal cortex. The conception, delegation, and planning of this domestic labor, what we call the mental load, remains heavily asymmetrical. It falls predominantly on women, even in households that claim to split physical chores 50-50.
So you have the financial penalty, the sleep deprivation intoxication, the calendar dodging, and the heavy cognitive load. All of this friction builds up until something snaps. And that brings us to zone 5, the reevaluation crisis.
It's the moment when the cognitive and financial friction reaches an absolute boiling point. It causes an ontological shift. You suddenly calculate the true value of corporate prestige against the value of your non-market time.
Hold on. Ontological shift is a pretty heavy academic term. Can we break that down? Are you just saying their fundamental understanding of reality, their place in it, actually changes?
Precisely. The paradigm through which they view success completely shatters. The research calls one of these breaking points the Keurig Epiphany.
The Keurig Epiphany.
Yeah. A director of operations walks out of a grueling performance review where she was criticized for not showing enough enthusiasm for the mandatory return to office policy. She goes to the corporate kitchen to make a coffee, looks at her $2,200 mortgage, her $1,500 daycare bill, and she just runs the math.
And what does she find?
She realizes that after taxes and commuting costs, she is netting $4.80 an hour to have a stranger watch her daughter take her first steps.
Wow. The math just strips away the entire illusion of the prestigious career.
It does. It forces a complete reassessment of worth.
There's another great example in the field notes called the warm Teal Walkout. A marketing VP is trapped in a 6:15 p.m. meeting. 3 childless senior leaders are aggressively debating the exact hex code of a delayed email banner.
Oh, corporate minutia.
Right. They're literally arguing whether it should be warm teal or soft seafoam. She looks down at a photo of her sleeping baby on her phone. She realizes she has missed 3 bedtimes this week to debate the color of an email banner that no one will even read.
Yeah.
So she quietly packs up her laptop, says, "I have a hard stop," and literally walks out of the building.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the Keurig Epiphany and the warm Teal Walkout are the exact moments a high performer realizes the corporate ladder they've been climbing is made of cheap cardboard. The trade-off of sacrificing their neurological health and their child's early years for a nominal bonus or a slight title bump is revealed to be deeply, fundamentally irrational.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? It means the ambition handbrake is not a sign of weakness. It's not laziness. It is a highly disciplined, logical response to an organizational model built for an unconstrained, traditional, ideal worker who simply does not exist anymore.
The systems are rigid, sure, but human biology and basic economics are not. Decelerating is just a rational response to a systemic failure.
So, to you listening, if you are currently executing high-efficiency mediocrity just to keep your sanity intact, if you are calendar shielding to do the laundry, or calculating daycare late fees during a budget meeting, your strategy is mathematically and neurologically validated. You are making the smartest move on the board.
You are operating successfully within the constraints of reality, unlike the corporate structures that employ you.
And that leaves us with one final, very provocative thought to mull over. We've looked at the impact on the individual today, but what about the macro level? If the corporate world continues to demand unlimited availability, if it continues to structurally and financially penalize the people who can't provide performative overwork, what happens to global corporate innovation in a decade?
That's the real question.
When an entire generation of top-tier talent realizes the ladder is cardboard and strategically taps out of the extra mile, the corporate pipeline won't just be fragile. It might completely collapse under its own rigidity. So, next time you are hiding in that soundproof phone booth, ordering those bulk diapers, just remember, you aren't just surviving Tuesday. You might be the canary in the corporate coal mine. Thanks for diving deep with us today.